And this is why we don't play Zoldrak Ritualist without Oaken Summons.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh God.
Well, you got a Poisonous up.
Yeah. I don't think there's any counterplay here. Like, I straight up don't survive. Yeah, fuck it, I'm just doing it. I'm going off.
I'm going off, boys. Can,
Oh God, let's
catch
go.
you, that.
Dear God.
Oh my god, they got a Poisonous again, dude. Oh. How does Phil keep getting Pit Snake on his rolls, dude?
Dude, people keep on getting pit snakes. I'm being triggered by this.
Hi everyone, A Loving Soul here. Hope this video finds you well. Today we're going to be doing something different. I'm not going to be piloting the deck today. I'm going to be sharing some replays of games that my friend Philip was actually piloting with one of his favorite decks to play in Wild right now, which is Taunt Druid. Since I didn't have most of the cards, I'm using an online deck editor with one of the deck codes that he sent me. The list might vary from game to game, but this was like sort of the general idea that he ended on. Interesting cards that he includes from the latest expansion is Zoldrak Ritualist. Typically, this is pretty bad to play on itself, obviously summoning 3 1-cost minions for your opponent, but the idea is to cheat this out with Oaken Summons, since this can recruit any minion that costs 4 or less. So if you've never seen Taunt Druid before, it's all about cheating out Hadronox and summoning boards and boards of taunts over and over again. So how do you do that? Typically, the one way to cheat out Hadronox is with Master Oakheart, which summons a 1, 2, and 3 attack minion. It's not as consistent in this build because we obviously have multiple 3 attack minions, but that's perfectly fine. In this metagame with so many aggressive decks, our goal is going to be really to stabilize and get to that late game. Once we get the first Hadronox down, there's multiple ways to bring it back onto the board. One way is to duplicate it multiple times with Carnivorous Cube, and the other way is Witching Hour. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to go through some replays of games that I played with my friend, and let's get to it. Alright, so we're going to be doing some post-game commentary. Game 1's against a Gul'dan, and this is our Taunt Druid deck that we're spectating our friend Philip play. So he opens up pretty well. He gets Breath of Dreams. This is pretty much the ideal card. It's a wild growth attached with card draw. The only thing is there is a prerequisite that he has to have a dragon. We were actually having a funny conversation because we were looking at the deck list that he had sent me, and he was only running 4 dragons in this deck, so you see that it's quite unlikely they'll have a dragon. So you'll probably want to tune up that dragon count if you want to bring this deck on the ladder yourself. We do see Oaken Summons. This is a card that we're pretty happy to see early on. Oaken Summons is going to try to cheat out that Zoldrak Ritualist, which is that 4 mana 3/9 taunt. Really good stats for the cost and helps stymie aggro decks. Notice that in this game we're against an Even Warlock. Even Warlock is kind of threatening because they tend to get out really early big threats, those 8/8 Mountain Giants, and in the mid game they'll be able to cheat out those free Molten Giants. We have a couple of slow turns here and there while our opponent gets to build up resources with their life tap. A little worrying, but we do have a very strong late game as Taunt Druid. We're not too happy to see one of the Zoldrak Ritualists. It's a pretty weak card if you have to play it on cost itself because its Battlecry summons 3 1 mana minions. You may have seen already that it can be pretty devastating when you have to do that. I'm pretty much just passing back and forth. There's not much to do as Druid in the early game, and since we don't have a dragon, we're not going to cast the Breath of Dreams for now. Our opponent plays an interesting card here. They play a Disease Vulture. But we're going to answer back with our own Oaken Summons. So Oaken Summons is going to draw out the second Zoldrak Ritualist in the deck. This is going to buy us some time to get us into the late game. Since our opponent has too many cards in their hand, they're going to be forced to play like suboptimal cards. In this case, a Hooked Reaver. Usually it's a 4 mana 7/7 against aggro, but in this deck against a Taunt Druid, where we're not really putting much pressure, like he has to just play as a vanilla 4/4. We finally got that 7/7 dragon off the top, so we feel like free to cast the Breath of Dreams. But still, we don't really have much to do with our other spare mana, so we're hero powering, hero powered, hero powering. And if you're comfortable with that, that's okay. We don't have to always have the most explosive plays in the early game. We're just biding our time and trying to get to our combo pieces, like being able to get our Master Oakheart or our Dragon Hatcher to really pull out those big beefy cards, and then finally our big finishers at Hadronox. Our opponent curves out with a very typical Dragon Warlock shell. He plays the 2/2 Fire True Witch Doctor as well as the Twilight Guardian. So they have a medium-sized board, but since we've ramped, we're a little ahead of the mono curve and we get to play the 7/7 Taunt. And notice that we're building progress towards that side quest, Strength in Numbers, one of the new cards from this expansion. Strength in Numbers allows you to cheat out a minion from your deck once you've played 10 mana worth of creatures. Our opponent plays a Dark Peddler here, and this is kind of scary because it gives them access to a very powerful 1 mana card. You'll notice that our opponent also follows up with Dirty Rat, which pulls out a card from our hand, and you think we'd be pretty happy to see our Lich King get pulled out. But soon our opponent's going to combo off with the card that they got off Dark Peddler, which is nothing other than Plague of Flames, which is why he summoned such a big board. So Plague of Flames allows him to destroy our board by sacrificing his own. And our opponent, since he's dumped out a couple of cards from his hand, he's going to be able to start live tapping again and look for his big threats. If you've noticed something about our opponent, he's played a couple weird choices. Sort of not typical of a traditional Even Warlock. We'll wait a bit to see what I mean by this. So here we pop 2 cards because we popped our Strength in Numbers. So we got both the 4/8 from the Dragon Hatcher as well as the 7/7 from our side quest. Our opponent does answer with this Lich King, but it's not really a big deal. We have a pretty big board and we get that branching pass off the top. So right now we're just thinking about whether how we want to pattern our turn. I think Philip here wanted to push some damage, which is why he went for the branching pass. He's going to sort of split the difference. He's going to buff up the board once while also drawing a card because he still doesn't have quite all the combo pieces. You see, like in his hand, he's had that Witching Hour for a long time, but that pretty much is the central combo piece with Hadronox. Some easy trades across the board, and then we push some damage. The Warlock's getting low. But they do have some healing options like Spellstone. But off the top, he burns Reno Jackson. So this isn't just your everyday regular Reno Warlock. I mean, your everyday Even Warlock. It's a Even Reno Warlock, which is very interesting. And they get to play that really cheap Molten Giant, but they only have 1 Molten Giant. Our opponent taunts up here because they're pretty much afraid for their life. They did make a slight misplay by not playing Twilight Drake first, but that's fine. We get Master Oakheart, which is pretty much the centerpiece of our deck to get out that Hadronox. And then now that Hadronox is here, we can finally do our real Taunt Druid shenanigans, which is summoning big boards of Taunt minions over and over again. Just going to try to clean up the board a little bit and let Dragon Hatcher do its job, which is pull out those big dragons from our deck, and we get a Primordial Drake. Opponent's going to have to try to figure out how to deal with this, and they cast the Death Knight Gul'dan. But it's not going to summon very much because they only played 1 demon this game, which was that vanilla 4/4 minion, which was a Hooked Reaver. So we're pretty much nearing the end game here, so we just have to clean up the board and make sure that we're ready to go to the late game. So notice in our hand we have our 2 main combo pieces with Hadronox, which are the Carnivorous Cubes. Carnivorous Cubes allows you to destroy the Hadronox and keep 2 copies of Hadronox safely tucked inside in our Carnivorous Cube. We're going to go off with the combo this turn. We're going to destroy our Hadronox and summon a huge wall of Taunt minions, as well as get off that Strength of Numbers. And we pull out that cheeky N'Zoth, which is our super extra greedy option. We don't really care that it's there. We have so many stats on the board. This is going to force the Even Reno Warlock to pull off that mass AoE. Warlock does have a good mass AoE spell in Twisting Nether, but since it's a Reno lock deck, they only have at most 1 copy of Twisting Nether. In fact, our opponent doesn't even cast the Twisting Nether. They get the perfect answer off Zephrys, and I think Zephrys is smart enough to know that Twisting Nether is probably the only card that's going to help him out in this case. But remember that Carnivorous Cube was on the board, which had those 2 Hadronox tucked inside it. So with our second Carnivorous Cube in our hand, we're going to pull off the combo again. We're going to punch that Warlock for a little bit more damage, and then rebuild our huge wall of taunts once more. And then we pose the question for the Warlock, how are you going to deal with this board this time around? We even get a Lich King to get a Lich King card, but really it doesn't matter. Second Twisting Nether, but we had the Hadronox on the board, the taunt wall comes back, and that's pretty much the end of the game. And our opponent even says nicely done, so well played by Philip here. Alright, so now we're going to go over another game. This is going to be against a Mage opponent. So it should be a nice change of pace from the Even Reno Warlock that we played against last game. So Philip decides to keep his whole hand. Strength in Numbers is obviously a very strong card, and we still have the Dream to get the Breath of Dreams effect. Hopefully we get a Dragon this time around earlier. Turn 1's going to be very simple, play our Strength in Numbers. So for Mage, there's two big Mage decks in the metagame for Wild right now. It's going to be either Secret Mage or Reno Mage. Our opponent coins out an Arcanologist, so immediately we know it's some sort of Secret Mage. Secret Mage is a bit more aggressive, so they're going to put the pressure on us while also making us play around their shenanigans. Like Counterspell and Explosive Runes are going to be the big things that we have to play around. Early game's probably going to be a lot of hero powering if we don't get that dragon, because we won't be able to play our Breath of Dreams. Another Arcanologist comes out, so we know our opponent already has two secrets that we have to play around coming up into this turn 3. Hopefully they will have a way to cheat it out, such as Kirin Mage or Cabal Lackey. Hero powering to the face, nothing new here. Next turn we do have a couple options for our 4-drop, but we're going to have to wait and see what secret our opponents play. One secret, so if we play a minion here, it might get blown up by Explosive Runes. If we play our 4-drop, our 4-cost spell, it might get counterspelled. So we have to bite the bullet, we have to pick one of the two. I decided to go off with Vargoth Friths because of the high roll potential that we can get if he can stick. But it gets Explosive Runes, but that's sort of like life against Secret Mage. So we're going to take a bit more chip damage from these Arcanologists. They fetch another secret from their deck, that's fine. We also know that they have another secret in their hand from the earlier Arcanologist. Take 3 to the face from Medee's Valet. All is dandy, we're still at 19, pretty healthy, could be worse. Finally get a dragon off the top. That Primordial Drake unlocks our Breath of Dreams. We do decide to ramp here. We did have the option to go for the Oaken Summons, but we probably want to keep that armor gain. They play that new secret, it could have been a counter spell, so playing this sort of hedges between the two. We don't feel that bad if Breath of Dreams gets counterspelled. The only downside is that going into the next secret, this secret might actually be a counterspell, and we don't have a cheap secret to chain to play around that. I'm going to take another 3 to the face from another Medee's Valet. The opponent's board is quite symmetrical here. We're taking that slow bits of chip damage, getting low, it's kind of worrying. Here we sort of have to hope and pray that it's not a counterspell. Luckily it isn't. We get the 6 armor, super nice. We get Zoldrak Ritualist without having to pay for the battle cry, which summons those 3 1-mon minions. And hey, we're starting to stabilize here. Okay, so let's see what the Mage has up next. A Cabal Lackey, so probably another cheated out secret for 0 mana. So 3 secrets on the board. We know that the last 2 weren't a counterspell, so maybe this one is a counterspell. Secret Mage also has a couple of dead secrets that don't really come into play while we're trying to stabilize. Cards like Flame Ward, which deal 3 damage when attacking face. What's really nice here is that we top deck this Strength in Numbers off the top. We can chain this later to play around a counterspell. But here it's pretty easy. Since we had already committed some mana for our first Strength in Numbers, by playing the Primordial Drake, we fetch a minion out of our deck, and luckily we get a nice 7/7 taunt that can't be targeted out of our deck. Our opponent continues to play out minions, the Cloud Prince earlier as well as this Mad Scientist coming up. They managed to clear our 2 taunts, but we're into the late game, we're Taunt Druid, we've stabilized and we're pretty much gonna just run away with this game. Play Master Oakheart, which is gonna fetch out a 3 attack minion as well as a 2 attack minion. We don't get our Hadge Nox, which is perfectly fine. Ziliax gives us lifesteal, which is what Secret Mages hate to see, and Dragon Hatcher is gonna fetch a big dragon out of our deck. Even though our opponent has 4 secrets, we feel pretty comfortable here with the ability to lifesteal, as well as a wall of taunts that are going to keep coming out. Our opponent's kind of confused, they see lifesteal on the board, they don't have quite enough reach to end the game. They ping the Ziliax, but I think the Secret Mage knows that there's really pretty much no hope here, and they concede the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode where we got a chance to spectate one of my friends, Philip, pilot his Taunt Druid deck. He sent me over his final list. You'll notice that he took out good old Zoldrak Ritualist for these Ironwood Golems. A little less high rolly, but he got quite tilted when he had to hard cast the Zoldrak Ritualist, and out came those Pit Snakes, who clearly paid off the Zoldrak Ritualist. As you can see, I really don't have many of these cards, but if you decide to take this list or some version of Taunt Druid on the ladder, I wish you the best of luck, and until next time, peace.